Hello, welcome to our webinar today. I think we have attendees from about 6 different countries on our webinar today, so welcome to everyone wherever you are. My name's Steve Barker, I'm the Consulting Services Manager at Cedar Bay. I'm joined today by Jay Hopkinson, who is one of our Senior Business Consultants. Can you move the slide, please, Jay? If you don't mind, I'm going to run through a couple of quick housekeeping slides. I'd like to mention that we have all your microphones muted for this webinar. There is a question box or question facility that is available for you where you can ask questions as we go through the webinar. And the webinar will be recorded and available at the end of the webinar for you to share with your colleagues or listen again to. We also have a survey that we're going to ask you to fill in through the webinar. We'd appreciate if you could answer the question as honestly as possible, please. That would be much appreciated. Can you move on, please, Jay? So this is the first of our focused masterclass webinars built around CB apps that we're running this autumn. This specific webinar is entitled Transaction Builder, a Managerial Overview. All of our webinars will be made available on our website. So if you'd like to see any of them again, you can look on www.cedar-bay.com. I'll hand over to Jay in a second, but before I do, I wanted to explain that I've asked Jay to run this webinar because he's worked with many different IFS customers all over the world to deliver business improvements via using a combination of IFS applications and Cedar Bay data capture. He also has a great understanding of the day-to-day functional and technical challenges that occur in businesses. For me, one of the fundamental elements of a world-class manufacturing facility is a strong and effective mobility solution that helps you to deliver effective stock management, manufacturing processes, traceability, and customer order related processes. Jay joined us with a wealth of experience in both supply chain and manufacturing, from high volume repetitive manufacturing to food and beverage type businesses. Since joining Cedar Bay, Jay has worked on many different implementations for us where he has led the data capture projects. Data capture is not complex, it's logical. And we've demonstrated that with a configurable solution like CB apps, customers can improve their business. However, we've also recognized there are occasions when customers would like to be able to make changes themselves, and this is why we're all here today. This webinar is designed for business managers to understand how Transaction Builder can help them to understand what is achievable. There is a further Transaction Builder webinar scheduled for the 18th of November for technical people to see how the toolset can be used in more details. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. There is a slight delay between when you post your question and when we see the questions, so we will answer these questions towards the end. I'll now hand over to Jay.
Thank you for the introduction, Steve. Hey everyone, I'm Jay Hopkinson. That's my introduction given by Steve already. Thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar. I appreciate we're all busy people. Today I'm going to talk to you about Transaction Builder and how this can be used to enhance your solution and provide a better managerial overview of IFS. The way I'm going to present to you today is through 4 things. We call them context, concept, solution, and benefits. Simply put, where does Transaction Builder fit with the overall CB app solution? What is it? What can I do with it? And how does that benefit me as a manager and my business? And as I go through the slide deck, at the top left-hand corner, you'll see which particular part of the process we're going through. So where does CB apps and Transaction Builder sit? CB App Store is a suite of core transactions that enable IFS functionality to be performed using scalable processes. We have over 100 core transactions out of the box in our CB App solution that engage with IFS. The Transaction Builder enables us to extend this solution and perform additional value-added tasks from alternate devices, updating IFS in a more tailored and bespoke fashion. What is Transaction Builder? So Transaction Builder, this is a toolbox. It enables you to create your own transactions within Cedar Bay apps to interact with IFS in a custom non-core manner. Transaction Builder transactions are created using building blocks, and within the solution there are a series of pre-configured and fabricated building blocks that you can speed up the process of creating your own transactions. You're totally in control of these. There's no modification costs with Transaction Builder. You create them, you maintain them, you manage them. They're all done on in-house skill set. Today I'm going to focus on a particular transaction to enable a better monitoring of our shift changeovers. So I'm picking a functional area that I have knowledge of. We're going to look at a transaction in Transaction Builder to perform a 5S shift changeover. And although we're focusing on this transaction, it can do a myriad of things using the same methodology and approach as you'll see today. So CBApps for Server, for those who haven't seen CBApps for Server, this is where we have our core transactions, our users, our menus, and Transaction Builder is a module within this environment. Within the environment, we can also do label designs. We can identify specific devices, and we'd actually interact with those devices through the CBApps console. So Transaction Builder, in more detail, here are a bunch of designed modules. So these are all non-standard transactions that we've created during presentations and demonstrations. And this is where you can manage and maintain them. So it's quite simple. You can edit the transaction, you can copy it, clone it, take an existing core transaction, copy it, edit it, make it into your own version. So becoming non-core, becoming something that works better for you. Things like capturing additional information, custom field capture, interacting with custom logical units, all these options are now available. Great thing about this is it's all managed on the server. There's no client installations. So any changes that are made to the server are reflected the moment the user logs back into their device, whether that's a touch screen or a handheld or a mobile phone. So today I'm going to focus on one particular example just to show you how the construct of Transaction Builder is done. We're going to focus on this thing called the 5S audit, which is sort, set, shine, standard, and sustain for those who come from a lean manufacturing background. What we're going to be doing is saying, I want to identify a work center where I'm going to record some results. And I also want to capture a bit more information. So I want some questions answering. I want the supervisor's signature, and I want to store this inside IFS somewhere so that I can analyze it. I'm not going to go specifically into the application. As Steve mentioned, we've got a technical workshop on the 18th of November, which you're more than welcome to attend. Today I'm going to be showing you what it looks like so you get an overview of the process of creation. So if I was editing my module, I create a series of pages, and each page represents a step in my workflow. So for this particular 5S audit, I'm going to start the transaction on a starting page, and the next thing I'm going to do is select a work center from a drop-down list. So I'm going to show you the building blocks in which we can do that. Then to the right, you can see all these different steps and pages that are connected. You'll also see some arrows. The system will put an arrow on the screen if there's a backwards and forward action from one page to another. So you get to see the whole workflow. So if I go into one of the pages, so as an example here, I've got the Get Work Center screen. Okay, 2 bits of information required to make a page in our workflow. One is, what does the page look like? And one is, what do I want the page to do? So this page is Get Work Center. So logically, I want to get a list of work centers. So I've got a drop-down list of values field called Filter Work Center. I've got a back button and I've got a next button. The pages we provide to you are quite generic. There are a lot of standard pages like grid views, list views, text blocks, input boxes, buttons. We have a bunch of prefabricated pages, or you can create your own from scratch. You have that option. Okay, behind the button, behind the Get Work Center, is a series of code. And it looks like a bunch of coloured blocks, but these are all predefined blocks, and they are really easy to set up, and they operate a drag, drop and snap kind of connectivity. And each one of these blocks has got code behind it, and you don't need to see that code because it's all pre-coded for you. We can use the code to do checks to say, have I got work centers on this site? Yes or no. If I don't, then I can present it back with there are no work centers on this site. That or words to that effect, and this is where we control it. If I go into a bit more detail, behind the select work center action, the top half of the code says go and get me the work centers, and that's actually calling a controller, which is a predefined prefabricated block of code to go and pull back the work centers. And all this is created very simplistically. We have templates, we have as I mentioned, these prefabricated blocks, and we just change a few key fields in there to match the data we're trying to pull back. On each page there is a series of code blocks, and those connect up to make our workflow. We just looked at one page in isolation, but behind each page is a series of blocks that do certain activities. So if I look at my CV Apps menu, from a setup perspective, I can add in a designed module into my menu in the same way I can bring in a core transaction into my menu. So the menu I've got configured on screen there is one called JH Demo Menu, and it's got 3 subfolders: manufacturing, production, inventory, and inside them are transactions. And in the manufacturing subfolder, I have my 5S checklist demo transaction. And we're going to go on to how the operator sees this on the next screen. But within this environment, I can allocate an icon, a color to the button, some text. I can control what the operator sees. They do not need to be aware that this is something custom. It's just another transaction they perform, part of their daily duties. So from the client perspective, the operator will log in, and they get the main menu on the left as their first step. They would tap on the manufacturing button, and that will take them to the next sub menu, which has got our shop floor workbench, operational reporting, and 5S audit buttons. So 2 core transactions and 1 transaction builder designed transaction. Okay, so the operator would select the 5S audit, and they will be stepped through a series of screens. And each one of these screens is one of our pages from Transaction Builder. So screen 1 is the work center, and the drop-down list of values that's displayed on the screen there is being pulled by our code block, and the values returned are all the locations, work center locations that exist on the site that I'm currently working on. Next screen is capturing the team leader name. Next screen is entering the shift I'm working on. Then we've got the checklist type. So this is where it becomes useful for an end of shift checklist to be compared with the start of shift checklist on the next shift. And we can look at for differences in the rating or the measurement of the 5S and look at why that's different. Do we have a misunderstanding of what standard means? Are we missing some controls? Has something happened between end of shift 3 and start of shift 4? These are the tools. Next thing is the entry of the scores. So this is a rating of 0 through to 4. These are all drop-down list of values. We've then got a confirmation screen, say I've finished with my audit. And this is a screen where we can capture the signature of the person doing the audit. And this is quite useful for traceability and auditing purposes. What we're actually doing with this transaction, just this transaction, is we've created a custom logical unit on apps 10 to store the results of the 5S audit. We're also using this to capture the signature through document management through a particular document class. So again, we've got our audit, we've got our traceability. What we've also done is by going down document management route and signing the screen, we've got rid of paper, so we don't have any 5S audits, we don't have any paper out in the production environment that can get lost or damaged. We get rid of handwriting challenges because we are selecting drop-down values for the work centre and for the scores. So we put a load of controls in place. And once this data is within IFS, you've got our usual methods of quick reporting, querying. For those of you using apps 9 and 10, lobby elements just sit on top of this. And we've got our evidence of the audit. If we need to go into any improvements. So if we're constantly scoring a low score on a particular changeover, then we need to look at how long that's taking, what the cost is, and we can do something about it as a manager. So this is an example where that information has just been presented back on the lobby. So this is my manufacturing quality manager's lobby. I can filter by work centre, time range. It's all very visually clear. As it's a lobby element, I can change that. I can have it as a chart. I can have it a RAG, a red, amber, green gauge. And I can identify issues over time, also issues that are happening right now that need to be addressed. I can also use this information to trigger automatic emails to the manufacturing and maintenance teams if we need any corrective actions to improve that work centre changeover. From a transactional summary then, so we took an example of a requirement, a business requirement, to see how are we doing in our changeovers. So that need was identified. We used Transaction Builder to create a solution, and we got the operator to enter the information. We removed our inefficient paper processes, and we used lobby elements to see the results at real time and over an extended time period. And this allows us to fix problems expediently. And we did all this without involving Cedar Bay as a development team. We've done it as an in-house transaction. So Transaction Builder, in summary, it's a method of capturing data real time using predefined code blocks and functionality. We can talk to IFS standard logical units, use standard API calls, or we can talk to our own custom logical units. You are totally managing this in-house. We obviously can support if required, but generally this is done with the training, and then it's over to you to get on with it. So Transaction Builder, it can do many things, and that's just how creative you think you can be. And on that, I will hand back over to Steve.
Okay, thank you very much, Jay. That was very useful. I think the next slide is that we've got a survey or a poll that we're going to post into the webinar. I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to present that. There it is. So if you wouldn't mind just reading that question, please, and then honestly and openly answer select the answer that you think most suits you and your business. That would be very much appreciated. So we're starting to see the results coming through at the moment. We've got a good number of people that said that they would like to learn more about delivering bespoke transactions, which is reassuring because that's why we're here today. A small number of you don't want to do anything at this time, which is fair enough. And about 8% of you would like to just review your data capture needs as a first stage. So that's very interesting. And thank you very much for your honest responses. I do appreciate that. If we could go on to the questions slide, please. No, we don't have a question slide. That's slightly embarrassing. Sorry about that, but do apologise. We don't actually have any questions that have been raised in the webinar today. Not sure why there aren't any questions, but there aren't any questions. I can only assume that you're mulling over or digesting the information that we've given you this afternoon. If we go on to,
we've got a couple of questions dropping in now, Steve. If you want to pick up on that. Yeah. So we got one, what was the IFS transaction which was completed as part of the demo? It was actually a completely bespoke transaction from scratch, not using control plans, not using inspection results, but we could have done a control plan with inspection results. Just so happens this was a completely unique transaction for the demonstration. That's the power of it.
Yeah, we've got a couple of other questions as well. There's a cheeky question from Chris Plant there. Is it free? I'm afraid not, Chris. There is a developer license that you need to buy, and that developer license would be installed on your PC. You would then be the developer, and then once you developed a transaction, you could then publish it in the same way that Jay showed you how to publish it a few minutes ago using the CB Apps admin tool. And then ultimately the end users, the operators on the shop floor, could then execute that new bespoke transaction or that modified transaction that you've built. There's another question. Have the invites for the Transaction Builder technical session on the 18th gone out? Well, I think we've advertised on LinkedIn and various other social media platforms to say that the Transaction Builder technical session is on the 18th. Certainly, if you look on LinkedIn and you query for Cedar Bay, the most recent post that we've had has an option for you to ask for a place on that webinar. So there's a number of questions you have to go through and answer, and then a confirmation message will be returned back to you. There's a question here from Dave Brooks. So how was the data captured into IFS? Jay, do you want to answer that question?
I'll go as technical as I really need to on this webinar. So the data is passed into IFS through standard API calls, but they're API calls into a custom logical package that we created for our custom logical unit. If we were doing something to a standard core module, an IFS core module, we're just using the API handling as if you were working at your screen. I think it's probably about as technical as I need to be today. We can go to more detail if required on the 18th. That's generally how it works. So we're using business best business practice really.
Yeah, I think the important thing to reiterate there is that we're using the IFS APIs. We're not inserting directly into tables, which is obviously a no-no in this day and age. So everything's done properly. Okay, I think there were 4 questions, and I'm hoping that we've answered those 4 questions. So what I'll do is I'll draw this webinar to a conclusion if we've got no more questions coming through. So if you do have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. Actually, can we change the slide to the closing slide, please? That's the one. Thank you. So if you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us on using any of the details that are shown on the screen right now. I'll be very happy to speak to you as individuals at a time that is convenient with you. Finally, I'd like to thank you all for attending this webinar called Transaction Builder and Managerial Overview, and hope that you have gained some understanding of what is possible using a combination of IFS applications, CB apps, and Transaction Builder. I hope you have a great afternoon, and thank you very much.
Thank you.